Uh, Welcome everyone to this small session on BPS industry as a whole, and basically how to reshape the BPS industry. That's what we are going to talk about today. And basically, where do we pitch and how do we transform? Where do we transform? These are all the added elements that will be forming part of this specific discussion actually. So I'm just going to share my screen and so yeah. So the whole idea is how to improve the maturity of BPS as an industry. We will exactly explore what is the current state and what is the desired state, all that, right? Uh, so so the whole idea is right now how the BPS looks like, right? So if I get into the BPS current state, I would call it as the BPS black box because most of the work that is performed here do not give the entire visibility about the actual work that is being performed in the client place actually. So that's why I call BPS as a kind of black box. Um, so the first thing about BPS is missing continuity in work performed. That means a certain part of work is performed um, at the BPS. When I say BPS, it's basically the business process service. See, at the BPS account level, certain amount of work is performed, but the remaining part of that work is performed at the client location, actually, right? Second thing is there are for depending on the type of client. For example, you may have a banking client, you may have another banking client, but both might be using different types of applications. Even when it comes to finance and accounts, you may have people from two, I mean, customers from two um customers who have outsourced their finance and accounts process, but their applications will be pretty different. Even the ERPs are pretty different. Even within the customer itself, there will be disparate application depending on the category of work being outsourced actually. So third thing is I would call that the customers are still stuck in IT compliance. As a result, a lot of data we are unable to access. Lot of as a result, the entire transformation effort is not is basically not very well focused and very well yielding the result, I would say. Third thing is there is a silo based change management because the change management has to happen at every customer account level. So that means if there are some 20 accounts within a banking domain, then we need to do change management in each of those areas actually, which again is a duplication of effort. A lot of time and energy and is wasted. So that is one problem with this BPS black box actually. So third thing is there is a huge non-standard way of processing. For example, if the same type of work is performed in banking, say we are talking about underwriting or financial spreading, maybe the way how it is performed across different across customers are different. So that is a problem here. This problem is because of the type of application being used and basically the type of standards or the procedures being used, right? So that's biggest issue we are facing. Third thing is the BPS as an industry is existing majorly as a cost component, even though we see many presentations where it talks about transforming the business at the client's place. So I still would like to debate it out because I'm still fully not convinced what type of transformation we are bringing in entirely at the client location. Actually, how much of that has turned really beneficial to the customer? So all these things are leading to what? A lot of change management is repeated duplication of effort. Tools are rebuilt. The same tool which is deployed in one particular customer location or customer account is being when it is getting redeployed or rebuilt, when it's getting leveraged in another place, it has to be redeployed, rebuilt. A lot of customization has to happen to suit the IT infrastructure that particular customer is having actually. So I would say most of the improvements from my what I have seen in is basically the mini bots are actually leading the show in terms of making improvements. But we know that how effective the mini bots are going to be when there is a process change, when we are trying to bring the tools together, right? So definitely, uh, I mean, this is not the kind of transformation we would need in a PPS industry actually, right? Third thing is there'll be huge overhead cost. um, so basically because of the need for redeploying things, because of the need for repeating the change management, so maintaining the frameworks, facilitating the framework, improving the DNA, all of that is costing a lot of overhead cost actually in the BPO. And I also see a lot of times, at least in the transformation per se, we are stuck in frameworks, we are stuck in COPC, we are stuck in Lean Six Sigma, we are stuck in many other, I mean, say, let's say Malcolm Baldrige or EFQM or Lean or whatever. So we are highly stuck in frameworks actually. So the problem with being stuck in framework is that, I mean, for that purpose of, I mean, whatever that framework is saying, we are doing it for the sake of that. So how it is beneficial to the business, how it is getting integrated to the business. So a lot has to be discussed over there actually. So what is causing this BPS black box? Definitely moving on. Uh, these are the feeders for the black box. One major feeder is the BPS is focused much on human intensive offerings, not on real solutions actually. If you see the kind of work that is being transitioned, the kind of work that has been lifted and shifted to offshore, specifically in BPS, most of the work is human intensive. They are not actually core areas. As well as even within the non-core areas itself, wherever is highly human intensive in terms of moving data from one place to another place, reviewing what's already existing, and then same way, for example, we are trying to manually calculate something. So these are all the kind of human intensive aspects that are coming in actually. So still, people who are doing that particular part of the work really do not have an idea why that work has got originated in the first place actually, from where it is occurring. So that clarity is really not there actually. And one more problem is, um, I mean, um, there is still not a kind of good estimate available. Out of the entire work being performed, what percentage of that work is actually attributing to the real work specific to the organization actually, right? So that estimate is still not available. So basically, if you talk about the current change management and transformation happening in these type of BPS work, the first thing first, I'm really not sure whether the back office service that I'm providing is really a back office work. So what percentage of that is really a back office work actually? I mean, when I say that, I don't consider the work that is um, that is originating as a result of incorrect processing somewhere or systemic issues somewhere. All those things I don't consider it as back office work actually. That's my definition of back office. A back office is something where whenever a customer is being approached, and the resultant paperwork, right, and amendment work, all of that I consider as back office work, the real back office work, not the work that has arisen because of some kind of systemic issues or defective processing somewhere, or due to some kind of IT related issues that two systems are not talking to each other. As a result, this work has to be performed. So this and the reconciliations, all those things, I don't consider them as real back office work. They are actually, I would say, they are level 3 or a kind of last level of work, which to some extent can be called as the back office, but not actually a back office work actually, right? So here is the problem, right? So the actual work is performed in the back office. The actual work for the customer is performed in the back office. So what is that work? If I have the visibility around it actually, right? So I don't have the visibility as far as I consider actually. I mean, so I mean, when it comes to BPS, we really do not have that visibility in many places, except in few places. I mean, except in finance and accounts, where we actually do the real time invoice processing, all those things. So that's where the back office work is very well done. And in few places within banking space, actually, we are talking about the real back office work. But actually, the actual back office, the core activities, where the real time amendment, real time processing of the customer data. So in most of the places, irrespective of whether it is banking or whether it is supply chain or anywhere else, it's really not happening in BPS. A large chunk of that work is still lying at the client organization. So in this scenario, if I don't do, or 70% or 80% of my work is actually not a back office work, where the real work is being performed, or so in that case, how can I claim to produce the real solutions and transformation, right? So if I don't improve the depth of my service being offered, how can I produce the real transformation and solutions? That is what we are talking about here. So third thing is, from my perspective, because of this scenario, the transformation effort and the change management effort that we are putting here is actually happening in the most unhappening place actually. This is not the place where the actual transformation, the actual change management has to be prioritized. There is a different place where the change management and transformation has to be prioritized. So from my perspective, if I compare the BPS industry earnings per employee with other industries, it is the lowest per employee, actually, lowest earnings per employee, because we are not actually performing the real back office work. 70 to 80% of the work are basically the work which originated due to some kind of issues or systemic problems somewhere, some okay, and that is what we are actually doing, right? So that has to be realized, right? So this makes BPS high stress, short visioned, and a boring industry from my perspective actually, right? So but how to improve it? That's what the whole idea is all about. So let's stop doing the transformation and change management in the most unhappening places. When I say stop doing, let us not prioritize. So some kind of change management, some kind of transformation is needed. Example could be, for example, if we are having a $50 million account for over a period of 5 years, and your margin is at 20%. That's a typical BPS margins actually. 20 to 25% is the typical margin. So what is the kind of change management, what is the kind of transformation you can bring in? Because transformation really requires certain amount of investments, right? So and as well as we know exactly how the BPS business units are organized. So as a result, the funding has to be brought in um, within the limits of the business unit. Whatever the business unit is actually generating as a business, from there only the funding has to happen. So most of the transformation that we claim, most of the change management that we are claiming, are basically the smaller investments that goes into satisfying the needs within the particular business unit actually. But actually, I mean, leave out the business unit, actually it goes to the customer account level actually, because That's how it works. So if we are talking about a $50 million account, so for 5 years, so the 20% of the margin that we are talking about is nothing more than a $10 million. So in this $10 million, how much can I spend in that actually for transformation and change management, and what is the result it's going to yield for this particular thing actually. And adding on to that, there could be certain unknown I mean penalty costs, all those things that are adding to the extreme margin pressure actually. So as a result, the transformation and the change management effort is going in a different directions in typically in BPO actually. So where the change management and transformation has to happen, that the the change management and the transformation has to happen in this portion. I'm talking about changing the perception. I mean, repitching BPS from a transactional service to a kind of connected value chain service. That is very important, right? Second thing is, um, don't focus too much on skill of offerings like ability to move data, ability to crunch data, ability to reconcile. So these are all the kind of skills that we are talking about. Talk about platforms, talk about domain expertise, all of that, which is happening to some extent, but basically this domain expertise, unfortunately, we are unable to fully uh, use in the end of the value chain, because our work, the BPS kind of work, is actually at the end of the value chain. So the whatever the domain expert that we are having, so that expertise cannot be leveraged powerfully in these areas actually. And consider rebadging shared service is not an actual work actually. So if you just get into the actual shared service, and if you do a due diligence and find out what percentage of that work that's happening is really a back office work, and for your information, it will be like 50 to 60 percentage. Remaining 40 percentage are basically the issues due to system issues, or somewhere some issue, some work is not being performed well. As a result, that is getting added as a kind of work in the shared service actually. So shared service is not actual work. A part of the, I mean, a significant part of it is actually a waste, we call it as actually, right? So that is why I'm trying to say that we have to go beyond shared services. We should go beyond transactional services. We should get into the actual value chain and find out, irrespective of whether it's a core or non-core areas, what is the continued value of chain of work that we can offer to our customers actually, right? So because that continued chain of work that we are offering, that's where the real transformation journey will happen actually. The real change management can happen only over there actually. Without that, we won't be able to make real inroads. We won't be able to bring in the right value to the customer. So the customer, of course, we are doing right now a good job in terms of implementing modeling techniques, in terms of platforms, in terms of RPA bots, all those things. But however, I mean, the customer is really happy with us, but that's not the end to the story, right? So because we can do much more than that actually. And if we really wanted to develop BPS as a matured industry, we want to go to the real 4.0, then the aspect of focusing on shared services, focusing on the human intensive transaction has to stop, and that should be a continued chain of work to be lifted and shifted into the BPS sphere actually. So that would help you to bring in more amount of profit and earnings per employee actually. So what change and transformation should happen? The first thing is the mindset change, as I was saying before. Stop with transitioning of shared services. Stop with transitioning the disjointed work actually, right? So if you talk about, for example, if we are going to transition only a part of the work, then what change management can I bring in there actually? What is the earning I'm going to get from there, right? So actual work, actual cost effectiveness can be brought into the client only when we go to their actual work, see which are all the areas, uh, which are actually connected to each other, right? So those connected stages of value stream has to be taken out, and it has to be offered as a service by the BPS. That's very important. And there should be a change in establishing relationship. So what we pitch for, that also matters, right? So how do we pitch, what do we pitch, right? So are we pitching for shared service center? Are we pitching only for a particular step of work? So what is that we are pitching for, right? So that is important. So what kind of relationships that we are building at the customer's place to understand where we can add value. So that kind of relationships management has to work effectively over here actually, right? And whom do we meet during sales pitching? Are we are we meeting the CFO alone? Are we meeting only the CIOs, right? Because the CFOs and CIOs, they will have real view on their I mean on their balance sheets and cash flow statements, and most of the CFOs and CIOs will be considering this SSE as a cost, right? But they don't consider other aspects, the actual work that is happening. They do consider it as a cost, but not a kind of overhead. They don't consider it as a kind of overhead actually. So we have to go beyond these type of costs, the overhead cost. We have to go beyond the actual the value adding costs, and look into uh, how much of that work we can take in continuity. So that is what I'm trying to say actually. So before doing this, be ready, do certain groundwork. So the first thing is we need to redefine core and non-core activities within the boundaries of regulatory aspects. That's very important. Understand which are all the core activities, which are the non-core activities that are happening within the BPS. Find out, and then find out actually in a real scenario what happens in a real scenario, in a banking scenario, in a lending scenario, or in a finance and account scenario, or in a supply chain management scenario. What exactly happens actually, right? So look into that and find out, okay, there are 100 core activities being performed by the organization, and I have taken only 2 core activities at a back office level, and out of the 100 non-core activities, I have got 70 non-core activity in my account, right? So take stock of that. That's very important. So if I don't take stock of that, I will never know exactly what are the value adding core activities that are being performed in the BPS space. I mean, that are performed in the customer organization. If I don't know, then I won't be able to bring that work out actually, right? Second thing is just have a right estimation of what BPS skill set we can handle. Like what type of work can be performed? Can we perform really an underwriting? Can we perform can we really perform purchase requisition process? Can we really perform purchase ordering process? So take a right estimation of what our BPS skill set can handle, and then compare that with the actual needs, because we right now have the list of core activities that are actually performed at the customer's place. And when we compare that with our skill set, we will know exactly, in order to get a fair share of that particular core work, what type of skill set improvement that needs to be made actually. So that discussion has to happen, that work has to happen. So that is what I mentioned, what more skill set enhancement has to be brought in. And so think of ways to standardize improve inputs for the industry across customers. So there are different ways. So each customer is sending the work in a different way, and so as a result, what we are doing is we are totally dependent on the customer applications to get the work inside our inside the offshore delivery center, and then we start processing it actually. Is there a way that we can standardize that input actually? Because we wield so much of influence uh, during the discussions with the CFOs and CIOs. So what thought process can we bring in so that instead of duplicating several IT infrastructure across customer accounts, can we have say for 20% of the, can we have the common infrastructure across the customers actually, right? So to get the work input, so for that we need to standardize the input. That's very important. And think of ways to improve commonality index, like for example, I mean, how underwriting is performed, how financial spreading is performed, how invoice processing is performed across different customers. Can we really bring in some kind of industry standard, or can we bring in certain amount of standard, so that and then we can bring in such kind of work, so that that's going to reduce uh, a lot of our overhead processing, right? So this is what I'm saying. So for doing all this I mean this getting the standard input, getting the processing done at a common level, right? So across the customers, so that's where the actual transformation has to occur. That's where the real change management has to occur actually, right? So this cannot be achieved just like that. But if we achieve the standardization, if we achieve the transformation, if we achieve the change management at this level, then you don't need to put so much of effort, you don't need to have so much of margin pressure at the end of your value chain. That's what I'm trying to talk about. And third thing is, there are standardized the application set across customers. So don't, it's not about we are going and we are changing the customer application, not that. We leave the customer infrastructure as is, but however, when the work is coming into the offshore delivery center, it gets processed, right? And then from there, it will be fed into the customer systems using certain engines. That's what I'm talking about. So that means, irrespective of customer A, B, C, D, we are going to have the same set of applications for receiving the work, for managing the work, and for delivering the work actually, right? So when we deliver the work, the same engine will adjust in a way that it goes and puts the data into the system of the customer. That's it. So that's what I'm talking about. So it's an additional layer wherein, instead of we people or the associates working directly on the customer infrastructure, customer IT, um, we should be able to have our own set of applications which is common across different customers within the industry. Say for banking, there should be a system to get the data input, loan packages, and then there should be a system to manage the work commonly across the customers. That's very important. And then there should be a place to deliver the work actually. So as a result, we don't go and touch the customer infrastructure, we leave it as is, but rather we bring in good amount of security standards, right? Good amount of standards which doesn't cross the regulations, which is able to provide a guarantee that the customer data is not misused in any way, and the good amount of robust methods and standards and applications which will ensure the accurate storage of the delivered work into the customer's application actually. So these three things are very important. So that is where the real change management, real transformation has to come in actually. If we really achieve this, then we don't need to have so much of wastes in terms of IT infrastructure. These are all the, I mean, capex costs that we are talking about actually. So can we really consolidate the amount of capex cost that is happening in BPS actually? So that is the thought process that I'm trying to bring in actually, right? So three important things. One is, can we standardize the inputs that are coming in, the way it is coming in? Second thing is, can we bring in commonality index uh, with the way how we process? So how can we do that commonality? Right now the commonality index is, for example, client A, client B, the commonality of processing maybe 20% or 30% during loan origination, or maybe 20% or 40-50% during invoice processing, right? So how can I improve that commonality index? So the first main thing that I can improve the commonality index is go back to the customer's aspect and try to do something about their process. Find out how commonly can we operate across the customers. Go and do the change management over there. So that's what I'm trying to say. that this change management requires a lot of consultative thought process, right? So, and so from a BPS angle, we should move towards the consultative angle. And once that consultative thought process has been brought in, then we should take the role of deployment experts and then help them deploy those changes, and then we bring in that part of the work actually, because not every work can be eliminated and reduced actually, right? So that commonality index has to be improved, and then we bring in standard applications for getting the input, for managing the work, and for delivering the work. So if we take care of this particular change and transformation, then nothing like that actually. We don't need to go to the tail of the value chain and start doing all this transformation and change management to a greater extent. So the amount of effort over there in the that's put in transformation and change management, 60, 70, 80% it will come down. But how the amount of benefits you get, the amount of revenues we get, the amount of margins we get will improve significantly if we go to the real work and do something to standardize it, and then bring to our standard applications in the way how the input is received, managed, and delivered actually. So that's where the real change management has to occur. So for standardizing the applications, yes, of course, we have to leverage the power of cloud. So here it's just a framework level I have given. I'm not totally prescriptive, but certain amount of steps I have provided. These steps can increase or decrease, but however, this is the need of the hour. We need to standardize our inputs. We need to standardize improve the commonality index across the customers. And we need to improve the way how things are received, how it is managed, and how it is delivered. So I'm repeating myself, but this is what we have to do to bring in the real change management and real transformation actually. And when it comes to the BPS maturity index, so now we want to really find out whether are we there in the BPS 4.0 really. So that is the soul searching we need to do. For doing that soul searching, these are the key matrices that needs to be measured to find out whether we are in the 4.0 maturity index or not actually, right? The first thing, what is the earnings per employee in BPS versus as a ratio of earnings per employee in the concerned domain? For example, um, the in financial services, right? So what is the earnings per employee of the people in banks, for example, in a typical bank? What is the average earnings per employee in a typical bank, right? So that becomes your denominator, and your numerator becomes the earnings per employee in a banking domain within the BPS. So what is that percentage, right? So that percentage, so that means I earn only 10 percentage of the earnings that is earned by a banking employee for the organization, or 20%, is it 30%, is it 40% of the. So that is what we have to try improving, right? So that would help me understand whether the kind of work that I am performing is really a value added work or not, whether I am working on the core area or not. So that would help me understand actually. The second thing, what percentage of disjointed work I am performing across stages within the domain. So if I take up the entire value chain within finance and accounts, the entire value chain within origination in lending, all right. So what is that disjointed work I am performing? So what percentage of the work is disjointed? So where the connectivity is not available, right? So can I take stock of that, and can I keep improving it? When I say keep improving it, uh, right now I'm doing 60% of the disjointed work across stages within the domain. Can I reduce it to 30%, 20%, right? So this is an input metric which is going to impact your earnings per employee, the first metric actually, right? So the third thing, we are talking about percentage of application uniformity. That's very important, because uh, there could be n number of applications that are used in each customer accounts. Can we take stock of, okay, for origination, which are those, what are the applications being used? Out of that, how many of those applications are actually common across the customers? What is that commonality index in terms of my? So that means, if it is it 20% of the applications are common, or is it 30% of the applications that are common? Is it 40% of the applications that are common? 50% of the applications that are common? Let's understand that. That's very important. If we don't, so that is important actually. So this is really very difficult to change, right? So because we cannot just go and tell the customer you have this application. I mean, that change management is something superficial, I would say actually. But however, it's as a measure, it will help you understand the amount of disparity that is happening in terms of applications within that particular domain actually. So that will help you understand what proper steps can I put in terms of my change management, in terms of my transformation at the right place, so that I'm able to bring in common applications for receiving the work, for managing the work, and for delivering the work at my end actually. That will bring in, right? So for example, when it comes to sales, I mean, generally Salesforce is used as an application across various organizations. So if at all we are trying to uh, bring in some kind of commonality, I mean, the commonality is already existing to a greater extent. So what we can do is we have to focus only on standardizing the processes across the customers, right? So that is what we are talking about, transformation. So we are not talking about replacing the customer applications. And second, next one is what percentage of tools redeployed across customers within the domain. Say I have developed a modeling tool, and for how many customers I have redeployed it. So whenever I redeploy, a lot of customization has to happen, a lot of enhancements has to happen, because I may not be doing the same level of work between customer A and B. Maybe customer B, I'm doing more or less amount of work. So accordingly, my tools ability has to be customized, right? And according to their applications, that my tools ability has to be changed actually. So these are all the problems we are talking about, right? So if at all we are having a common list of applications at the BPS end to manage to get the inputs and to deliver the work, then the tool redeployment need not happen, and a lot of customization needs will come down drastically actually. So that means the custom transformation effort need not be duplicated. That is what I'm trying to say. So next thing is, what percentage of my operational matrices are really impacting my customer industry outcomes, or directly impacting? That's what I'm trying to say actually. By having 100% on time delivery in this type of work, what change is happening at the customer's end? Do I have knowledge about it? That's very important actually, right? So that's where we have to think beyond our SLAs, our KPIs, right? And we have to think from the perspective of how we are impacting the customer's business, right? So these are the key matrices that needs to be measured in terms of understanding where your BPS maturity index is all about actually. So thank you so much for your time, and any questions, you can very well comment in my LinkedIn video, and I'll be in a position to answer it. Any thought process, any point of views, I'm open for a discussion actually. Thank you so much.